My son and his wife started a fight at Christmas dinner for the fourth year in a row. I turned off the lights and left alone on a jet to Miami. But what I found there changed everything forever. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I would. And if you for a second feel like this sounds familiar, I just ask that you leave a like and subscribe. It will help me to keep unburdening myself. The scent of cinnamon and cloves filled my house in Oak Park, Illinois. I had been preparing Christmas Eve dinner for 3 days. My wrinkled, 64-year-old hands had peeled every potato, toasted every pecan for the turkey stuffing, and prepared the spiced apple cider with the recipe my mother taught me 40 years ago. The table was set with the heirloom china I inherited from my grandmother, Grace, the kind that sparkled under the warm light of the dining room, waiting to create memories that would never arrive. My son Michael, 33, arrived at 8 o'clock sharp with his wife, Jessica. He wore that forced smile he had perfected over the last 4 years, the same one he used when he visited me out of obligation rather than affection. Jessica, in her tight black dress and heels that clicked against the hardwood floor like tiny daggers, didn't even greet me. She just muttered a good evening while checking her phone. "Mom, the house smells amazing," Michael said, but his eyes were already elsewhere, avoiding my gaze as he had learned to do so well. He hugged me for exactly 3 seconds, that mechanical hug that hurts more than direct rejection. I was wearing my navy blue dress, the same one I'd worn every Christmas Eve for the last 10 years. Not because I didn't have others, but because Michael once told me that color made me look elegant, like a high society lady. Those words had been my treasure for a decade, and now they felt like broken glass in my chest. Dinner began in silence. Jessica pushed the food around her plate as if it were poison, while Michael drank wine faster than usual. I smiled, asked about work, about their plans, desperately trying to fill the void that grew denser with each passing minute. "How's the construction project going?" I asked Michael, knowing he ran a small construction company. "Fine, Mom." "Same as always," he replied without looking up from his plate. Jessica snorted. "Fine? If by fine you mean we haven't closed a major contract in 3 months." "Jessica, not here," Michael muttered. "Not here what? The truth? Your mother has a right to know her perfect son isn't so perfect," she retorted, aggressively cutting a piece of turkey. I felt my stomach clench. It was the 4th consecutive Christmas where they turned my table into a battlefield. Every year I promised myself it would be different, and every year it was the same nightmare disguised as a family dinner. Could we talk about something more pleasant?" I whispered, my voice trembling slightly. Jessica looked at me with those green eyes that I once found beautiful and now cut me like knives. "You know what, Helen? It's incredible how you always want to sweep everything under the rug, just like your son." "Leave her alone," Michael said, but without conviction, like someone defending something they no longer believe in. "Leave her alone. She's part of the problem. You always have been, haven't you, Helen? Always protecting him, always justifying him, never letting him grow up and be a man." The words pierced me like bullets. I froze, holding my fork in midair, feeling my 44 years of maternal sacrifices evaporate in that cruel and unfair accusation. Michael stood up abruptly. "That's enough. We're leaving." "Perfect!" Jessica shouted, throwing her napkin on the table. "Running away again, just like always. Like when you couldn't defend our marriage. Like when you couldn't land the contract with the with the Millers. Like when—" "Shut up!" Michael's shout echoed through the house, making the window panes tremble. I had never heard him scream like that. Not when he was a teenager. Not when we argued about his grades or his girlfriends. This scream had something different, something broken, something that went straight to my soul. Jessica fell silent for a moment, but her eyes shone with a mixture of satisfaction and contempt. There he is. There's the real Michael, the one who yells because he doesn't know how to be a man. In that moment, something inside me broke. It wasn't my heart. That had been breaking slowly for years. It was something deeper, more essential. It was my hope. I rose slowly, my legs trembling like an old woman's, though I felt infinitely older than my 64 years. I walked to the dining room light switch, my steps echoing like the beats of a stopping heart. "What are you doing, Mom?" Michael asked, his voice for the first time in years sounding concerned. I didn't answer. I just turned off the light. The house was plunged into darkness, illuminated only by the flickering lights of the Christmas tree I had decorated with so much love a week earlier. In that darkness, I could finally see clearly. I no longer had a family. I had cruel visitors who came once a year to destroy my peace. Without a word, I went up the stairs to my bedroom. Behind me, I heard their confused voices, wondering what was happening, but their words faded like echoes from a life that no longer belonged to me. In my room, I pulled the small suitcase from the closet, the one I used for weekend trips I no longer took since I was widowed. I packed clothes for 3 days, my passport, and the envelope of cash I kept for emergencies. This was definitely an emergency. 44 years raising that son alone. 44 years of sacrifices, of sleepless nights, of working double shifts as a nurse to give him everything he needed. And now, after all that, he allowed his wife to humiliate me at my own table, on the most sacred day of the year. I called a cab. I Googled, last-minute flights Chicago to Miami. There was one. It left in 4 hours. For the first time in decades, I was going to do something entirely for myself. In the taxi on the way to the airport, as the lights of Chicago blurred through the window fogged by my tears, I began to remember everything I had given for that son who now allowed me to be trampled on as if I were a stranger. Michael was born on a rainy Tuesday in October 1991. His father, Robert, left when my boy was just 6, taking our savings and leaving me a note on the kitchen table. I can't handle this responsibility. Helen, you're stronger than me. Take good care of him. $20 in my wallet, a baby to raise, and a heart shattered to pieces. That was my inheritance. I worked double shifts at Cook County General Hospital as a nurse for 17 years. I would get home at 11 at night, after 16 straight hours of caring for the sick, and still have to help Michael with his homework, pack his lunch for the next day, and wash his school uniform by hand because we didn't have a washing machine. My hands cracked from so much soap and cold water, but his clothes were always spotless. I vividly remember the day Michael turned 12. He had seen a red bicycle in the window of Henderson's shop, near the local market. It cost $400, exactly what I earned in a month working extra weekends. I stood in front of that window for half an hour, imagining the joy on his face. That day, I decided it didn't matter if we ate beans and rice for 2 months straight. I worked shifts on Christmas Eve, New Year's Day, Mother's Day. I could never say no when they asked me to cover for a colleague because I needed every extra dollar. Michael ate breakfast alone before going to school, had dinner alone waiting for me to get home from the hospital, and did his homework at the kitchen table under the dim yellow light of the bulb I never got around to replacing. "Mom, why do you never come to the school meetings like the other moms?" he asked me once. He was about 14. He was sitting on his bed, his eyes red from crying. I had just gotten home from a 24-hour shift, and my legs could barely hold me up. "Honey, I'll talk to the teacher tomorrow, okay? Mom just has to work so we don't lack anything." But all the other parents were there, and I was the only one alone. I couldn't sleep that night. The next day, I requested my first day off in 6 months to go speak with his teacher. Mrs. Rodriguez greeted me with an understanding smile. "Michael is a very bright boy, Mrs. Evans, but I notice he's sad, as if something is missing." Was something missing? I had given him everything. My youth, my health, my dreams. I had turned down 3 marriage proposals from good men because I thought Michael needed all my attention. I had passed up the opportunity to study to become a doctor because I couldn't afford medical school and raise a child at the same time. When Michael turned 18, I took out a loan to pay for his civil engineering degree at the University of Illinois. 5 years of payments that took half my salary each month. 5 years of eating mac and cheese and grilled cheese sandwiches while he studied, went to parties, had a girlfriend. He never complained about anything because I never let him lack for anything. On his graduation day, I wore the green dress I had bought for my sister's wedding 10 years earlier. It was the only elegant thing I owned. Michael looked so handsome in his cap and gown, smiling alongside his classmates. When they handed him his diploma, he shouted from the stage, "Mom, we did it! We did it." Those words were the most beautiful gift I had ever received. But something changed after that. Michael got a job at a construction firm, earned good money, and moved into an apartment in Lincoln Park. His visits became sporadic, our phone conversations shorter. "I'm really busy, Mom. I'll call you later," became his favorite phrase. He met Jessica at a company party, a pretty girl from a well-off family, with a degree from a private university. The first time he brought her home, she looked at my old furniture, my 20-inch television, my mended curtains, with an expression I couldn't decipher then, but now understood perfectly. Pity mixed with contempt. "Your mom is very wholesome," she said to Michael that night, thinking I couldn't hear them from the kitchen. "Yeah, she's always been very traditional," my son replied. "Traditional? Is that how he described the 17 years I spent working like a dog to give him a decent life?" When they got engaged, Michael asked me for money for the ring. "I just want to get her something special, Mom, you understand." I lent him my savings. $3,000 I had saved over 3 years, putting aside every spare dollar after paying for electricity, gas, and food. $3,000 he never paid back. For the wedding, I wanted to wear a pink dress I had seen downtown, in a department store near the cathedral. It cost $200. Not expensive, but not cheap for a retired nurse's pension. When I mentioned it to Michael, he frowned. "Oh, Mom, don't you have something you already own? With all the wedding expenses." I wore the same green dress from his graduation. In the photos, you can tell it was faded, that it was missing a button I had to sew on with a different colored thread. But I smiled for the cameras, danced at the reception, and toasted to their happiness. After the wedding, visits were reduced to obligatory holidays. Birthdays, Mother's Day, Christmas. He would arrive in a hurry and leave in a hurry. Jessica always found some excuse not to come. A headache, extra work, social commitments. When I got sick with a spinal issue 2 years ago and had to have surgery, I spent a week in the hospital. Michael came to visit once for 15 minutes between one meeting and another. Jessica never showed up. "Need anything, Mom?" he asked, standing by the bed, checking his phone. "Just for you to stay a little longer," I said, reaching my hand out to him. "Oh, Mom, you know I have so much work. But you're okay, right? The doctor says you'll recover quickly." He left before visiting hours were over. I was left crying in silence, looking at the other beds where other sons did stay all afternoon with their sick mothers, where daughters-in-law brought flowers and asked what they needed. My neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, was the one who took care of me when I got out of the hospital. She, who barely knew me, brought me chicken soup every day, helped me bathe, and stayed with me at night when the pain was so bad I couldn't sleep. "Where's your son?" she asked me one afternoon. "Working," I lied. He's always been a hard worker. But the truth was that Michael had found very creative ways to avoid taking care of me. He would call on the phone instead of visiting. He would send money for me to hire help instead of helping me himself. He would send me flower arrangements from a florist instead of bringing them to me personally. The taxi stopped at a red light on Michigan Avenue. The driver, an older man with a graying mustache, looked at me in the rearview mirror. "Are you all right, ma'am? Do you need me to pull over somewhere?" I realized I had been sobbing without noticing, that my cheeks were soaked. "No, sir. Let's go to the airport. I have a flight to catch." "Pleasure trip?" For the first time in 4 decades, the answer was yes. "Yes," I said, surprising myself. For the first time in my life, yes. On the 3rd day in Miami Beach, while I was having breakfast on the hotel terrace watching the seagulls fight over breadcrumbs thrown by tourists, I made a decision that would change everything. I turned on my phone. I had 43 missed calls from Michael, 18 WhatsApp messages, and to my surprise, 5 calls from a number I didn't recognize. Michael's messages had evolved from concern to anger, from anger to desperation. "Mom, it's the 3rd day. This isn't normal." "Where the hell are you? I'm worried sick." "I went to your house. No one's there. The neighbors don't know anything." "Mom, this isn't funny anymore. Answer me. Jessica thinks maybe you had some kind of episode. Do you need medical help? An episode? For going on vacation? For taking 3 days for myself after decades of being available 24/7? But what really shattered me were the following messages. Michael had contacted the entire family, telling them his version of events. My sister Carmen had written, "Helen, what's wrong with you? Michael says you left without a word on Christmas. You don't do that. My sister-in-law rose. We're all worried. Children need their mothers, especially at this time of year. Even my neighbor, Mrs. Peterson. Your son came by asking if I'd seen you. He looks very distressed, Helen. Everyone had been mobilized to find the irresponsible mother who had dared to disappear on Christmas. No one asked why I had left. They all assumed I was losing my mind, that I'd had some kind of nervous breakdown, that I needed to be rescued from my own temporary madness. When had I gone from being a capable adult who could make her own decisions to a senile old woman who needed constant supervision? When had I lost the right to move freely without reporting to anyone? The unknown number was from my cousin Eleanor in Tampa, with whom I had lost touch years ago. Helen? Michael called, says you've disappeared. Are you okay? I'm perfectly fine, Eleanor. I'm in Miami, on vacation. On vacation? Oh, cousin, you gave me a scare. Michael sounded like you were an Alzheimer's patient lost on the street. That's the problem, Eleanor. Everyone sees me as an incapable old woman, not as a woman who decided to take a few days for herself. But why did you leave like that without telling anyone? The question bothered me. Even Eleanor, who had been my partner in crime when we were girls, now questioned my right to spontaneity. Because I'm 64 years old, Eleanor. Because I own my own time and my own decisions. Because I don't have to ask anyone's permission to move. But Helen, but what? How many times has Michael gone on a trip without telling me? How many times has he canceled plans with me at the last minute? But when I make a spontaneous decision, I'm the crazy one in the family. Eleanor was quiet for a moment. You're right. I hadn't thought of that. No one thinks about it, Eleanor. Because mothers don't have the right to be unpredictable, to have crises, to need space. We're supposed to be immovable rocks, always in the same place, always available. That afternoon, I decided to walk around downtown Miami Beach. In a pharmacy, I bought a notebook and a pen. I sat in a small park near a local church and began to write a list of all the humiliations, big and small, that I had endured in recent years. The time Michael canceled my birthday because Jessica had an important event with her friends. The time Jessica said, in front of everyone at a family gathering, that my old sofa made the whole house look poor. The time Michael told me he couldn't take me to the doctor because he had to take Jessica to the spa. The time I arrived at a family dinner with a fever, and Jessica commented that I was always sick to get attention. The time I spent my savings on a wedding gift for one of Jessica's friends, and she didn't even thank me. I wrote for 3 hours. 12 pages of small print. 12 pages of slights I had been storing in my heart like someone collecting tiny daggers. Reading the full list, I realized something terrible. It wasn't just that Michael and Jessica treated me badly. It was that I had allowed every single one of those humiliations. I had smiled. I had said, "Don't worry." I had justified every offense with, "They're just stressed. They're young. That's just how things are now." I had become an accomplice to my own invisibility. That night, while eating fish tacos at a street stand facing the ocean, the first time in years I'd eaten street food without worrying about my digestion or what people would think, I dialed Michael's number. "Mom, thank God. Where are you?" "In Miami." "In Miami? What are you doing in Miami?" "Vacation." "Vacation? Mom, you've lost your mind. A vacation on Christmas? Without telling us?" "Michael, how many times have you gone on vacation without asking me how I am?" "That's different." "Why is it different?" Because I'm young. I have my life. Because I'm your mother and mothers don't have their own lives, right?" Silence on the other end. "Mom, that's not it. You just scared us. I scared you by taking care of myself. I scared you by doing something that made me happy. You just disappeared." "I didn't disappear, Michael. I left. Like an adult woman who makes decisions about her own life. But, you know what scares me, Michael? That you're 33 years old and you think you need to know where your mother is 24 hours a day? That's not it. Then what is it? Because for 4 years, I have always been available for you. Always. And the first time I'm not available, it becomes a family drama." I heard him sigh. "When are you coming back?" "When I want to come back." "Mom, please don't be like this." "Like what, Michael? Like a woman who values herself? Like a person who makes decisions about her own life?" Jessica says you're going through a crisis. Jessica is right. I am going through a crisis. I've finally realized that I've been living like a shadow of myself for years. I don't understand. I know, Michael, and that's part of the problem. I hung up the phone with my hands shaking, but not from fear. From liberation. For the first time in decades, I had hung up without apologizing, without softening my words to make him feel more comfortable, without promising him that everything would be okay. That night I slept for 10 hours straight, without waking up worrying about Michael, without checking my phone, without thinking about everything I had to solve the next day. For the first time in 40 years, I slept as Helen, not as Michael's mother. And Helen slept very well when she finally gave herself permission to exist. On the 4th day in Miami Beach, I woke up with a strange feeling in my chest. It wasn't anxiety, it wasn't guilt, it wasn't the familiar weight of pending responsibilities. It was something I took several minutes to recognize. It was peace. I hadn't felt it in so long that I had forgotten what it was like. My phone had 37 missed calls. Not just from Michael anymore. Now the whole family had been mobilized in my search. My sister Carmen, my sister-in-law Rose, even my 80-year-old Aunt Jean from Phoenix, who barely knew how to use a phone. But what struck me most were 5 voice messages from Jessica. Her voice had lost that characteristic arrogance. Now it sounded nervous, almost pleading. Helen, it's Jessica. Michael is going crazy. He hasn't slept. He hasn't been eating. Please call us, even just to say you're okay. The second message was longer. Helen, I know things between us haven't been good. I know I've said hurtful things. But please come back. Michael needs you. Michael needed me? After 4 years of making me feel like a burden, now he needed me? The third message left me cold. Helen, I went to your house with Michael. We saw you took clothes, your passport. We also saw you emptied your savings account. Michael thinks maybe you're not coming back. He's talking about hiring a private investigator. A private investigator? To find a 64-year-old woman who went on vacation? When had I gone from being a nuisance to a fugitive criminal? The fourth message was more personal. Helen, I never had a close relationship with my mother-in-law. My mom and my husband's mom hated each other. I thought that's just how things were supposed to be. I thought it was normal for mothers and daughters-in-law not to get along. And the fifth message broke my heart in a way I didn't expect. Helen, Michael told me things I didn't know. That you worked double shifts for years to pay for his education. That you sold your jewelry to help him with the down payment on his first car. That when he was little, you ate beans and rice so he could have meat. I didn't know any of that. He had never told me. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding the phone with trembling hands. Jessica had just said more nice things about me in 5 minutes than in the 4 years I'd known her. But what struck me most was the realization that Michael had never told his wife about the sacrifices I had made for him. To Michael, my love had been so natural, so taken for granted, that he didn't even consider it worth mentioning. I decided to call Carmen, my younger sister, before she also hired detectives or put my picture on milk cartons. Helen, my God, where are you? Michael is driving us all crazy. I'm in Miami, Carmen, on vacation. On vacation? At Christmas? Alone? Yes, alone. And it's wonderful. But Helen, that's not normal. Women our age don't just go off alone. Why not, Carmen? Because you just don't. Because it's dangerous. Because what will people think? Because we have responsibilities. What responsibilities do I have, Carmen? My son is grown. I don't have a husband. I'm retired. What are my responsibilities? Well, to be available for the family. Ah, to be available, like a piece of furniture. Don't say that. When was the last time you did something just for you, Carmen? Well, I'm always doing things for myself. Like what? Silence. Carmen, tell me one thing you've done in the last year that was just for you. That wasn't for your husband, for your kids, for your grandkids, for the house. Well, I got my hair cut. Did you get it cut the way you wanted? Or the way Bob likes it? More silence. Carmen, we've spent 40 years living for others. Don't you think it's time we lived for ourselves? Helen, you're scaring me. You don't sound like yourself. You're right. I don't sound like the Helen you know. I sound like the Helen that always existed but kept quiet for decades. After hanging up with Carmen, I decided to do something I had never done in my life. I went to a mall alone and bought clothes that I liked. Not practical clothes, not clothes that were appropriate for my age, not clothes that others would approve of. I bought a red dress, bright red, knee-length, that showed off my arms, which, although 64 years old, were still my arms. I bought gold sandals, long earrings that tinkled when I walked, and a lipstick the same shade as the dress. The salesgirl, a young woman in her 20s, smiled when she saw me come out of the dressing room. "You look beautiful, ma'am. That color is incredible on you." "Really? I don't look ridiculous?" "Ridiculous, not at all. You look elegant, you look confident. You look like a woman who knows what she wants." A woman who knows what she wants. When was the last time someone had described me that way? I put everything on immediately. I walked out of the mall feeling like I was wearing a costume, but a costume I liked better than my own skin. I walked down Ocean Drive in my red dress and gold sandals. Men turned to look at me. It had been years since I had noticed men's glances, not because they weren't there, but because I had stopped considering myself worthy of being seen. I sat down at a cafe and ordered a cappuccino and a slice of chocolate cake, just because I wanted to, not because it was my birthday, not because I was celebrating anything special, but because I wanted to eat chocolate cake on a Thursday afternoon. As I ate, I watched the young couples at the other tables. They were constantly taking pictures, laughing, kissing, living each moment intensely as if it were unique and unrepeatable. When had I stopped living like that? When had I started living on autopilot, following routines, solving other people's problems, existing without truly being present in my own life? My phone rang. It was Michael again. "Mom, please, talk to me. I'm desperate." "Hello, Michael. Where are you exactly?" "I'm coming to get you." "You're not coming to get me, Michael." "What do you mean, no? You're my mother. You're my responsibility." "No, Michael. I am not your responsibility. I am a grown woman, capable of taking care of herself." "But Mom?" "But nothing. For 4 years, you've treated me like I was a nuisance, like my existence was a burden. Now that I'm gone, that I've stopped bothering you, you come looking for me. You don't bother." "I don't? Then why every time I invite you over for dinner you come in a rush? Why every time I call you tell me you're busy? Why does Jessica look annoyed every time I come to her house?" "Mom, it's not like that." "Yes, it is, Michael. And the saddest part is that I allowed it to be that way. What do you want from me? Tell me what to do. I want you to respect me as a person, not just as your mother." "I do respect you." "No, Michael. You tolerate me. There's a difference." "Mom, please come back. We can talk about all this at home. I'm not coming back until I'm ready to come back." "And when will that be?" "I don't know. For the first time in 40 years, I don't have a plan. And it feels liberating." "Mom, you're killing me. I can't sleep. I can't eat. Now you know how I've felt for 4 years every time you ignore me, every time you cancel plans with me, every time you let Jessica treat me like I'm invisible." "Jessica doesn't treat you. Jessica hates me, Michael, and you know it. You've known it for years and you've never done anything to defend me." Silence. "Is that true, Michael?" I didn't know you felt that way. "Because you never asked. In 4 years of marriage, you never once asked how I felt about your wife's comments, about her slights, about the way she made me feel like an intruder in my own family." "Mom, I'm sorry. I don't want you to apologize, Michael. I want you to change." "How? Tell me how, and I'll do it. Learn to see me, not just as your mother, but as Helen. As a woman who has tastes, opinions, feelings, dreams." "What dreams do you have, Mom?" The question took me by surprise. Not because it was hard to answer, but because it was the first time in decades that anyone had asked me about my dreams. "I want to travel, Michael. I want to see new places. I want to read books that aren't about cooking or cleaning. I want to have friends who don't know my family problems. I want to wear clothes I like even if they're not practical. And why don't you do it?" Because for 40 years I believed it was selfish to want things for myself. I believed a good mother only lives for her children. "Mom, I never told you you couldn't do those things. You didn't have to tell me. Every time I mentioned wanting to take dance classes, You told me it was ridiculous at my age. Every time I talked about traveling with Eleanor, you asked why I would waste money on silly things. I don't remember that. Of course you don't. Because to you, they were insignificant comments. But to me, they were confirmation that my desires didn't matter. I hung up the phone and sat in the cafe, watching the sunset over the Atlantic. For the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty for hurting my son's feelings. I felt proud for defending my own. On the 5th day in Miami Beach, as I was eating Eggs Benedict at a beachfront restaurant, a dish I had never tried because Michael always said fancy breakfasts were pretentious, I received a call that changed the course of this whole story. It was Jessica, but not the arrogant Jessica I knew. This voice sounded broken, vulnerable. Helen, I need to talk to you. Not as a daughter-in-law, not as Michael's wife. As a woman. I'm listening. I'm in therapy. I started 2 days ago, after Michael told me everything you two talked about. I fell silent, holding my fork halfway to my mouth. Helen, I never learned how to relate to older women. My grandmother died when I was little, and my mom and her mother-in-law hated each other so much it was impossible to be in the same room with them. And does that justify how you've treated me for 4 years? No, it doesn't justify anything. But it explains why I thought it was normal to treat you the way I did. She sighed deeply. My therapist asked me yesterday, how would you feel if your future daughter-in-law treated your mother the way you treat Helen? And I started crying. I cried for an hour because I realized my mother wouldn't deserve the treatment I've given you. For the first time in 4 years, Jessica sounded human. Helen, Michael told me you paid for his college, that you worked double shifts for years, that you sold your things to help him with expenses I didn't even know he had. Why did he never tell you before? Because he didn't realize what you had done either. To him, your sacrifice was so natural that he didn't even see it as a sacrifice. And what's changed now? You left. And for the first time in his life, Michael had to face the possibility of truly losing you. I remained silent, processing her words. Helen, I know I have no right to ask this, but could you come back? Not for Michael, but because I need to apologize to you in person. I need to look you in the eyes and tell you I'm sorry. Jessica, Wait, let me finish. I also need to ask you to teach me. Teach you what? Teach me how to be a good daughter-in-law. Teach me how you treat your husband's mother, because I obviously have no idea. The conversation left me so confused that I decided to walk along the beach to think. The sea was especially calm that morning, like a turquoise mirror reflecting my jumbled thoughts. Was it possible Jessica was being genuine? Or was this another manipulation to get me to come back? My phone rang again. This time, it was a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Evans, this is Dr. Martinez, the psychologist seeing your son Michael. My heart sped up. Had something happened to Michael? Michael asked me to call you. He wants you to know that he's in therapy and is starting to understand a lot of things. Is he okay? Did something happen to him? He's physically fine. Emotionally, he's going through a very difficult but necessary process. Mrs. Evans, may I ask you something? Yes. Did you ever tell Michael that you felt invisible in your own family? Many times. But he never listened. He's listening now. Yesterday, we cried together for the entire session. He told me he had never seen his mother as a whole person, only as someone who was there to solve his problems. Doctor, why are you telling me this? Because Michael is having what we call a crisis of conscience. He is realizing that the person who has loved him most in his life is also the person he has hurt the most. And what does he need from me? Time, space to grow, and when you're ready, a chance to really get to know you. Get to know me? Yes, Mrs. Evans. Michael realized yesterday that he doesn't know your favorite color, what kind of music you like, what your dreams are, what makes you laugh. He has lived for 33 years without truly knowing his mother. That revelation hurt more than I expected, not because it was new, but because it was a professional confirmation of what I had felt for years. Doctor, do you think it's too late to change a 40-year relationship? Mrs. Evans, it's never too late to start relating from a place of truth, but it requires both parties to be willing to get to know each other as if for the first time. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in decades. I went into a bookstore and bought 3 books. Not cookbooks, not craft magazines, but novels. One by Toni Morrison, a classic by Faulkner I had never read, and a book of poems by Emily Dickinson. I sat in a cafe and read for 3 hours straight. No interruptions, no to-do lists, no one needing anything from me, just me, a cold coffee I had forgotten about, and the words of Emily Dickinson filling spaces in my soul I didn't know were empty. I am out with lanterns, looking for myself. Those words struck me like lightning. How many times had I been accused of being dramatic, over the top, too sensitive, when all I was doing was reacting to years of accumulated slights? My phone vibrated. It was a message from Michael, but different from all the previous ones. Mom, the doctor asked me what your favorite color is, and I didn't know what to say. He also asked what kind of music you like, what books you read, what your best childhood memories are. I didn't know anything. Nothing, Mom. I'm 33 years old and I don't know my own mother. I feel horrible. I replied. My favorite color is yellow, like sunflowers. I like the music of Frank Sinatra and Ella Fitzgerald. I'm reading poems by Emily Dickinson. And my best childhood memory is when my dad would take me to the market on Sundays and buy flowers for my mom. His response came immediately. Why had you never told me that? Because you never asked. Can I ask you more things? You can. What was the happiest day of your life? The question took me by surprise. I expected him to ask about himself, about his birth, his graduation. But he was asking about my happiness. The day I finished nursing school. I was 23. Your father didn't want me to study, but I managed to go to classes at night. When they gave me my diploma, I felt like I could do anything in the world. And what was the saddest day? The day I realized I had stopped existing as Helen to become just Michael's mom. When was that? Many years ago. It happened so gradually I didn't notice until it was too late. Mom, is it too late to get to know you? I don't know, Michael. But this is the first time in years you've asked me something about myself that doesn't have to do with you. Could you tell me more things? By text? By call? However you want. I want to get to know you. Really? Really. The doctor says I have to learn to see the women in my life as whole people, not as roles. That I have to start with you. That night, sitting on my balcony facing the sea, I wrote the longest message of my life on my phone. I told Michael about my youthful dreams, about the books I wanted to read, about the places I wanted to see. I told him about my lost friendship with Eleanor, about the times I had wanted to learn to dance, about my secret fantasy of taking painting classes. I told him about the nights I had cried in silence when I felt invisible, about the times I had pretended to be sick just to see if anyone cared, about the loneliness I had worn like a second skin for years. I told him about the woman I was before I was his mother, and about the woman I wanted to be now that he no longer needed me to survive. I sent that message in the early hours of the morning, when doubts could no longer stop me. His reply came an hour later. Mom, I didn't know you had suffered so much. I didn't know you were such a complete and interesting person. I want to meet that Helen you're talking about. I want to meet her too, Michael. It's been years since I've spoken with her. Do you think when you come back, you could introduce me to her? Only if you promise to treat her with respect. I promise I will learn to treat her as she deserves. For the first time in a week, I slept without feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders. My son wanted to get to know me. After 33 years, he finally wanted to get to know his mother. It was a start. On the 7th day in Miami Beach, as I was packing my few belongings, my money had run out and I had to go home, I received a call I wasn't expecting. It was Eleanor, my cousin from Tampa. Helen, can you talk? Yes, Eleanor. How are you? Better to ask, how are you? Michael called me yesterday. He sounded different. Different how? Like a grown man who finally realized his mother is a real person. Eleanor paused. Helen, I want to tell you something. After our conversation a few days ago, I couldn't stop thinking about what you said about living for others. And I realized that I've been living that way too. I haven't done anything just for myself in 30 years. Nothing. Eleanor, no. Let me finish. Yesterday I told my husband I was going to Miami Beach to see you. Do you know what he said? What? What for? What are you going to do there? As if I needed a reason to see my cousin. As if my desire to be with you wasn't reason enough. And what did you say? I told him, I'm going because I want to go. Because Helen is important to me. Because we have 40 years of pending conversations. And I came, Helen. I'm in the lobby of your hotel. I couldn't believe it. Eleanor had driven 4 hours to see me. Are you really here? I really am. And I brought a suitcase for 3 days. If you don't have the money to stay longer, it's on me. But I'm not going back home without spending time with you. I ran down to the lobby and there was Eleanor. My cousin, who had been my childhood partner in crime, who had been my teenage confidant, who had gotten lost in the labyrinths of marriage and motherhood just like me. We hugged as if 5 years, not 25, had passed since we had truly spoken. Eleanor, I can't believe you came. I couldn't believe my cousin had become so brave. I had to come meet this new Helen. That afternoon, sitting at a beachfront restaurant, Eleanor told me her story. It was so similar to mine, it was scary. My husband hasn't asked me how I am in 10 years, Helen. 10 years. He only asks if there's food, if his clothes are ready, if I paid the bills. And your kids? My kids call me when they need something. Money, to watch the grandkids, to solve some problem. But to call just to chat, to know how I feel? Never. And what are you going to do? I don't know. But seeing you here, seeing you do something as brave as leaving on your own, made me think that maybe it's not too late for me either. That night, Eleanor and I walked along the beach like we did when we were girls, barefoot, laughing at things only we understood. She told me jokes she remembered from our childhood. I told her about my adventures of the week, about my red dress, about my conversations with Michael. Helen, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you regret leaving? No, not at all. Not even a little bit? Eleanor, for the first time in 40 years, I feel like myself. Why would I regret that? And what if Michael doesn't really change? What if this is all just a temporary crisis and then he goes back to treating you the same? The question made me think. If that happens, Eleanor, at least I will have changed. At least I will know that I deserve respect, that I deserve to be seen, that I deserve to exist as a whole person. And is that enough? It's more than I had a week ago. On the second day with Eleanor, we decided to do something we had dreamed of as kids. We went to see the sea turtles. We booked a tour that took us to a nature reserve where we could snorkel alongside giant sea turtles. Helen, look! Eleanor shouted from the water, pointing to a huge turtle swimming calmly beside us. I had never seen anything so beautiful. The turtle was at least 100 years old, had survived storms, predators, pollution, and there it was, swimming with the serenity of one who knows they have lived long enough to fear nothing. It's like us, Eleanor told me when we got out of the water. It has survived everything and is still here, swimming in its own waters. That night, while we ate seafood and drank white wine, Eleanor made me a proposal that changed everything. Helen, what would you think if, after you go back and sort things out with Michael, we take a trip together? A trip? Where? Wherever we want. Europe, South America, or just all over the United States. The places we always wanted to see and never could because we had to take care of everyone but ourselves. Eleanor, that costs money. I have savings, Helen. Savings I've built up for 20 years without spending a dime on myself. What am I saving them for? To leave a bigger inheritance to kids who barely speak to me? The idea excited me so much I felt butterflies in my stomach. Would you really do that? You'd really go on a trip with me? Helen, we've spent 40 years being the good women, the responsible women, the women who never cause trouble. It's time to be the women who do what they want. That night I called Michael, but this time, he wasn't the one desperately seeking me. This time, I took the initiative. Michael, it's me. Mom, how are you? I miss you so much. I'm fine, honey. Very well. Eleanor came to visit me. Eleanor? Your cousin from Tampa? Yes. And I realized something important. I'm not the only woman who lost herself along the way. Mom, I've been thinking a lot about everything you told me. Everything you wrote. And I want you to know that when you come back, everything is going to be different. Different how? Jessica and I talked a lot. She wants to get to know you too. She wants to learn to be your friend, not just your daughter-in-law. Michael, that makes me very happy, but I need you to understand something. What? I'm coming back, but I'm not coming back as the same Helen. What do you mean? I mean, I'm going to keep traveling. I'm going to keep reading. I'm going to keep buying red dresses if I feel like it. I'm going to keep existing as Helen, not just as your mom. Mom, that sounds perfect. Really? Really? The psychologist says that a mother who values herself teaches her son to value women. And are you willing to learn that? I'm willing to learn to see you, Mom. To really get to know you. To ask you how you are and actually listen to your answer. And what if one day I decide to go on a trip with Eleanor for a month? I'll miss you, but I'll be proud to have a mother who lives her own life. For the first time in 40 years, I felt I had a son who respected me as a woman, not just as a mother. Michael, I'm coming back tomorrow, but I want you to know that I'm no longer going to be available 24 hours a day. What do you mean? I mean, I'm going to have my own plans, my own friends, my own projects. If you need me, you'll have to plan ahead, not expect me to drop everything to solve your emergencies. That seems fair, Mom. And is Jessica okay with that? Jessica says she wants to learn from you. She says she wants you to teach her how to be an independent woman. Really? Really? She also says that if she ever has a daughter-in-law, she wants to treat her the way she would want her own mother to be treated. I hung up the phone with tears in my eyes, but they were tears of hope, not sadness. The next day, as Eleanor and I packed our bags, she asked me, Helen, are you afraid to go back? Yes, but I'm also excited. Excited about what? About meeting the Helen who is going to live in my yellow house, who will receive her son as a guest, not as her owner. About meeting the Helen who will travel the world with you. Yellow house? Yes. I'm going to paint my house yellow. It's my favorite color, although nobody knew that until this week. Eleanor hugged me. Helen, I'm so proud of you. Why? Because you dared to save yourself. On the bus ride home, as I watched the landscape pass by the window, I realized I was no longer the same woman who had left her house on Christmas. I was Helen, and Helen finally knew her own worth. 3 months after my return from Miami, as I was painting the living room of my house a bright yellow, Eleanor had helped me pick the exact shade. The doorbell rang. It was Michael, but something in his posture was different. He didn't have that characteristic haste. He wasn't checking his phone, and he had flowers in his hands. Hi, Mom. How are you? Fine, honey. And what are these flowers for? They're for you. Sunflowers, because you told me you liked them. I stood frozen, holding the paintbrush dripping with yellow paint. It was the first time in decades that someone had brought me flowers just because. Michael, they're beautiful. Mom, can we talk? I have something important to tell you. We sat in the kitchen, the same one where we had had so many superficial conversations over the years. But this time, Michael looked me directly in the eyes, without distractions. Mom, Jessica and I broke up. The words hit me like a lightning bolt. Despite all the problems, I had never wanted their marriage to end. Michael, what happened? What happened was that in therapy, I realized Jessica and I got married for the wrong reasons. We got married because we thought that's how things were supposed to be, not because we really knew or respected each other. He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture he had inherited from his father. The psychologist had us do an exercise, to ask ourselves what we admired about the other as people, not as a couple. And we discovered we didn't know how to answer. And how are you now? Better apart than married. Jessica also realized important things about herself. She asked me to tell you that she's grateful to you. Grateful to me? Why? For showing her what it means to respect yourself. She says seeing you leave that way taught her that women don't have to put up with mistreatment from anyone, not even family. I got up to put the sunflowers in water, needing a moment to process this information. Michael, are you okay? I'm sad, but I'm also relieved. For the first time in years, I don't have to pretend something is working when it's not. He was quiet for a moment. Mom, there's something else I want to tell you. Tell me. I want to apologize, not just for these past few years, but for a whole lifetime of not seeing you as a whole person. Michael, no, let me finish. I want to apologize for taking your love for granted, for thinking you were inexhaustible, for allowing you to be treated badly. His eyes filled with tears. I want to apologize for never really asking how you were, for not knowing your favorite color, for not knowing that you like the poetry, for not realizing how lonely you felt. Michael, And I want to apologize for turning you into my emotional employee instead of valuing you as my mother and as a woman. I cried. After 40 years, my son finally saw me. Michael, I forgive you. But more importantly, I forgive myself too. You forgive yourself for what? I forgive myself for becoming invisible, for believing my only value was in serving others, for forgetting that I am also a person who deserves respect and love. We sat in silence, a comfortable silence for the first time in years. Mom, can I ask you something? Of course. What are you going to do now? With your life, I mean. I smiled. It was the first time someone had asked about my plans as if they really mattered. Eleanor and I already bought tickets to Italy. We're leaving in 2 months. Seriously? That's incredible. You don't think it's wrong for your 64-year-old mother to go to Europe for 2 weeks? I think it's great that my 64-year-old mother is doing what makes her happy. Really? Really? The psychologist says that the children of happy mothers learn to find their own happiness instead of waiting for others to give it to them. That afternoon, Michael helped me finish painting the living room. We worked in silence, but it was a companionable silence, not an awkward one. For the first time in years, I enjoyed being with my son without feeling like I had to take care of him or please him. Mom, can I ask you something else? Yes. How did you know you had to leave? How did you know it was time to save yourself? I didn't know until I did it. But I think there was a part of me that had been screaming for years. And that Christmas night, I finally listened to it. And weren't you scared? I was terrified, Michael. But I was more scared of continuing to live as a ghost of myself. 2 weeks later, I received an unexpected call. It was Jessica. Helen, it's me. Can we meet? Are you sure you want to do that? I'm sure. There are things I need to say to you. We arranged to meet at a neutral coffee shop near the park where Michael used to play as a child. Jessica arrived on time, but she looked different. Less done up, more natural, as if she had stopped wearing a mask. Helen, I want to thank you. Thank me for what? For leaving that night. For having the courage to do what I would have never dared to do. Jessica, no, listen to me. That night, when you turned off the lights and left, I sat there in your dark dining room and for the first time, I realized what I had been doing. She wiped away tears with a napkin. I realized I had been treating my husband's mother like she was my enemy, when in reality, you were the woman who had raised the man I claimed to love. And why did you do it? Because I was afraid Michael loved you more than me. Because I didn't know how to be a daughter-in-law without being competitive. Because no one had ever taught me that I could admire you instead of seeing you as a threat. Jessica, I was never your competition. I know that now. My therapist helped me understand that my insecurity had nothing to do with you, and everything to do with me. She took a sip of her coffee. Helen, I know Michael and I aren't together anymore, but I would like to be your friend, if you'll let me. Why? Because you're an incredible woman and I was too immature to realize it. Because I'd like to learn from you. Because I want to be the kind of woman who respects herself the way you respect yourself now. Jessica, I didn't always respect myself. It took me 64 years to learn how. But how did you learn? When I realized that no one else was going to value me if I didn't value myself first. We spent 2 hours talking like we never had before. Jessica told me about her childhood. About how she grew up watching her mother compete with her mother-in-law instead of forming a female alliance. She told me about her fears, her insecurities, her therapy process. Helen, can I ask you a favor? Tell me, when you get back from Italy, could you tell me about your trip? I'd like to live adventures through you until I have the courage to live my own. Jessica, you can travel too. You can have adventures too. At 32? After a divorce? Especially at 32 and after a divorce. It's the perfect time to rediscover yourself. When we said goodbye, Jessica gave me a genuine hug. Helen, I'm so sorry for the years we lost fighting instead of getting to know each other. They weren't lost, Jessica. They brought us to this moment. That night I called Eleanor to tell her about the conversation with Jessica. You see, Helen, your bravery didn't just save you. It gave others permission to save themselves too. What do you mean? Michael learned to value women. Jessica learned she can respect herself. I learned it's never too late to live your own life. And how are things with your husband? Different. I told him I was going on a trip with you and that it wasn't negotiable. At first, he got angry, but then I think he started to see me differently. Different how? As a woman who makes decisions, not as a woman who just obeys them. And does he like that? I think it scares him, but he likes it too. He says he hasn't seen me this alive in years. Eleanor, do you think we did the right thing? Helen, do you regret leaving? Not at all. Then we did the right thing. Because for the first time in our lives, we did what was right for us, not what was comfortable for others. A week before the trip to Italy, Michael came to say goodbye. He brought me another bouquet of flowers and a handwritten letter. What's this? It's a letter for you to read on the plane. Why on the plane? Because I want you to know how proud I am of you when you're flying towards your adventure. That night, as I was packing, I reflected on everything that had changed in 3 months. My yellow house, my poetry books on the nightstand, my new clothes hanging in the closet, the phone numbers of new friends I had met in my yoga class. But the most important change wasn't in any object. It was in how I saw myself in the mirror each morning. I no longer saw an invisible woman. I saw Helen, and Helen was ready to conquer the world. 6 months after my return from Italy, where Eleanor and I had explored Rome, Florence, and Venice like 2 teenagers with money in our pockets and infinite time, I was preparing Christmas dinner, but this time was different. This time, I had set the conditions. I'm only coming if I can bring something, Michael had told me on the phone. My therapist says healthy relationships are based on reciprocity, not on one person always giving and the other always receiving. You can bring dessert, I replied, surprised to hear my son talk about reciprocity. And can I invite someone? Who? Mariana, a colleague from work. She's not my girlfriend, we're still just friends, but she's different, Mom. She's a woman who respects herself, like you taught me women should be. On Christmas Eve, Michael arrived on time with a homemade key lime pie. He had taken baking classes, he told me proudly, and with Mariana, a woman in her 30s, a child psychologist, who greeted me with a genuine smile and a bouquet of daisies. Michael has told me so much about you, Mrs. Evans. He says you're the bravest woman he knows. Call me Helen, please. And I'm not brave. I just learned to value myself. To me, that is bravery. During dinner, I watched Michael with new eyes. This 33-year-old man who poured water without anyone asking, who genuinely asked how my week had been, who told Mariana about my travels with Eleanor as if they were the most fascinating adventures in the world. Mom, tell Mariana about the salsa dancing. Salsa dancing? Mariana asked with curiosity. In Venice, Eleanor and I took a salsa class, I told them, laughing at the memory. 2 60-something ladies trying to get the steps right. We were a disaster, but we had as much fun as little girls. And are you going to keep taking classes here in Chicago? Mariana asked. Of course. We have class every Tuesday at a studio over in Wicker Park. Michael looked at me with genuine admiration. Mom, can I ask you something? Yes. What does it feel like to be free? The question took me by surprise, not because of its content, but because of the depth with which he asked it. It feels like breathing after years of drowning without realizing you couldn't breathe. Mariana nodded in understanding. My mom went through something similar when she divorced my dad 10 years ago. She says it was the first time in her life she could make decisions without consulting anyone. And how is your mom now? I asked. Incredible. She's 60, went to law school, she had always wanted to be a lawyer. Lives alone in a small apartment she decorated exactly how she wanted, and she's the happiest woman I know. Mariana, Michael intervened. Helen didn't get divorced from a person. Helen got divorced from being invisible. His words went straight to my heart. My son had perfectly understood my journey. After dinner, while Michael and Mariana washed the dishes, they insisted on doing it together, as a team, my phone rang. It was Eleanor. Helen, Merry Christmas, cousin. Eleanor, how are you? How was your dinner? Incredible. My husband cooked for the first time in 30 years of marriage. He says he's learning to be a better partner. Seriously. Seriously. And Helen, I have news. What news? Do you remember Margaret, my neighbor, the one who was widowed last year? Yes. I told her about our trips, about how we had decided to live our own lives. And you know what she did? What? She signed up for painting classes. something she'd wanted to do since she was young. And not only that, she sold her big house where she felt lost and bought a small condo downtown where she can walk everywhere. That's wonderful. Helen, do you realize what's happening? What's happening? Your decision to leave that Christmas night didn't just change you. It started a chain reaction. Michael learned to respect women. Jessica learned to respect herself. I learned to live my own life. My husband learned to be a better partner. Margaret dared to start over. Eleanor was right. My small act of rebellion had inspired others to make their own. Eleanor, you know what's the most incredible thing about all of this? What? That it wasn't a plan. I didn't leave thinking I was going to change the world. I left because I couldn't keep living the way I was. And that's exactly what made it so powerful. It was authentic. After hanging up with Eleanor, I returned to the dining room where Michael and Mariana had put on soft music and were talking about books. Mariana had noticed my poetry books in the living room. Helen, what's your favorite poem? From Emily Dickinson. They shut me up in prose. It's beautiful. Could you recite it? I recited the full poem from memory, something that would have been unthinkable before my transformation. Before, I would have been embarrassed, would have said I didn't know poetry, that I wasn't cultured. That's gorgeous, Mariana said. It's about a woman refusing to be judged by the expectations of others. Exactly, I replied. Dickinson was defending herself from a world that wanted her to be something other than what she was. Michael looked at me with admiration. Mom, I had never thought of you as an intellectual, because you never saw me as a whole person, son, only as your mother who cooked and cleaned. And how do you see me now? I asked him. Now I see you as Helen, who happens to be my mother, but who before being my mother, and besides being my mother, is a fascinating woman with her own tastes, opinions, dreams, and knowledge. Mariana smiled. Michael has told me what your relationship was like before and how it is now. He says he used to have an invisible mother, and now he has a real one. And doesn't that scare you? I asked Mariana. To meet a man who is just learning to see women as whole people? On the contrary, she replied. It gives me hope. It means that when a woman values herself, she can teach the men in her life to value women. That night, after they left, I sat in my yellow living room looking at the lights on the Christmas tree. This year, the tree didn't represent family obligations or social expectations. It represented celebration, gratitude, renewal. My phone vibrated. It was a message from Jessica. Helen, Merry Christmas. I wanted to tell you I enrolled in an MBA program. I'm going to open my own consulting business. For the first time in my life, I'm going to work for myself, not to impress anyone else. I replied, Congratulations, Jessica. I'm so proud of you. She wrote back, I learned from the best. Before going to bed, I opened the letter Michael had given me before I left for Italy, which I had saved to reread in special moments like this. Mom, when you read this letter, you'll be flying towards an adventure. But I want you to know that your biggest adventure wasn't going to Italy. Your biggest adventure was daring to save yourself. For 33 years, I thought I had a mother. Now I know I have a mother, a woman, a friend, an inspiration. I know we lost a lot of time. I know I hurt you with my indifference. I know I made you invisible when you deserved to be seen. But I also know that it's never too late to start over. Thank you for teaching me that mothers are also women. Thank you for teaching me that love isn't shown through service, but through respect. Thank you for teaching me that it's never too late to change. But most of all, thank you for loving yourself enough to demand that we love you as you deserve. I love you, Helen, not just as your son, but as the man I'm learning to be because of you. Michael. I cried reading the letter, but they were tears of pure happiness. That night, as I got ready for sleep in my yellow house, surrounded by my books, my travel photos, my new plants, my colorful clothes, I reflected on the past year. 12 months ago, I was an invisible woman who endured humiliation for crumbs of family affection. Now I was Helen, a woman who respected herself, who traveled, who had friends, who read poetry, who danced salsa, who wore red dresses, who had opinions and expressed them. A woman who had taught her son to truly love women. A woman who had inspired other women to value themselves. A woman who had proven that it is never too late to start living your own life. As I drifted off to sleep, I smiled thinking about Eleanor, about our next trip to the Greek Isles, about the salsa classes, about the real conversations I now had with Michael, about the friendship I was building with Mariana. Have you ever felt like you're living someone else's life? That you've become invisible in your own family? If my story sounds familiar, or if you know someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to start valuing yourself, share your experience in the comments. And if this story reached your heart, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps me to keep sharing these stories that need to be told, so they can reach the person who needs to know they deserve to be seen, valued, and respected.